Thank you for the kind introduction. Happy to be here. Everybody can understand me, hear me clearly. I'm going to talk about the edge today. I don't think my presentation is as flashy as Martin's, but hey, Martin is the real professional speaker here. I'm just a sustainability professional. So I'm going to talk about, of course, about the building itself. At the end, I will show you a nice movie which is made by Bloomberg about it, which really shows in a very nice way how the building performs and how it looks. In the beginning of my presentation, I would like to give you some insights what sustainable building means for an investor and what it means for end users. The developers are in between those parties, of course. They have short-term involvement with the building. They have vision, of course. The real drivers in the market, I feel, are the investors and the end users. A few words about my company, C2N. We founded in 2004 as a project management company. We switched to sustainability, I think in 2008. That was the year before the release of BREEAM International. We met some people, David Lawrence, perhaps you know him, from AIG. He was a good friend of mine, and he introduced us in the world of sustainable, certifiable buildings. And I really saw it as a big opportunity to diversify my business in that direction. The first projects that I know of were apparently in Eastern Europe, in Poland at that time. It really took us on, and we were at the first training sessions for BREEAM International. I think it was in 2009 in Germany. I met some people there from my own country who were at that time thinking about setting up the Dutch Green Building Council. So we participated in that. After that, we took a big part in the translation of BREEAM International to the Dutch standards. So we have BREEAM NL in the Netherlands, and ever since, we are very active in certifying and helping our clients to make better sustainable buildings. We also do LEED, which is of course the American system, but that's not so common in the Netherlands for various reasons. We are now also a partner of GRESB. GRESB is a real estate benchmark for portfolios. I think Martin also gave us a hint already about the importance of green funds in the market. And also we are looking at WELL, which is a health-orientated certification system from the US. We really try to follow all the new developments and to make a coherent proposition for our clients. Another thing, we also do some consultancy. We make sustainability reports on a broader level, and our core business was and is still a big part of our business, which is project management, mainly in the upgrades of existing buildings, like 80, 90 type buildings, which really are transformed for another 30 years to perform and to attract new tenants. Okay, the edge. Why is this a sustainable building? Of course, it's rated end of 2014 with the highest BREEAM score at that time. But of course, that's not a goal in itself. It's just a result of all the things, all the measures that we have implemented in the design phase. So I would like to take you a little bit with the with what sustainability means for an investor, because the investor, someone has to want a green building, and it's not so very obvious. I think also that you will find it in your own market. It's not so very obvious that people want sustainable buildings. So you really have to show them what the benefits are and what good it does for their perspective. So of course, very important part of the stakeholders in our market are of course the investors, because they own the buildings, they invest in the buildings, and it's about their assets. I'm sure there are investors here, so I would really like to know if you can have some kind of if you recognize these these drivers. Of course, we didn't invent those drivers ourselves. It's about talking to investors, talking about clients, and yeah, this is what we see. Okay, if you look at the broader perspective for investors, we have seen, although in the Netherlands, that there's a growing pressure from investors like pension funds that they want to invest the money of their members in assets which are sustainable. You see that when there are stakeholder meetings, there are more and more people who are standing up and making a point of how sustainable is your asset. And the asset can be an oil or gas company, it can be a real estate company, it can be anything. At the moment, we have some examples in the Netherlands that great pension funds are withdrawing their investment from coal mining operations, say in the south of South America, because they know that of course, coal has a bad effect on our CO2 emissions, but it also the circumstances under which people working there are quite bad. So you see that all those kinds of effects are taken into account. So it's not only about sustainable buildings, but it's also about sustainable assets. And I think that this is a common. It's a movement. It's something that's happening in our society, and it will also affect our industry to provide sustainable assets. Of course, there has been some research about the performance of sustainable assets, sustainable real estate. Niels Kok from Maastricht has done a study last year. They used data from a US and a Canadian asset management company, about 500 assets. They have they were presented the data so they could do some analysis. So it's a Canadian and US market. So I'm not saying it would be per se the same market as we have here in Europe or this part of the world, but I think it should give us an indication about what it means for your investment. They found out that when they measure tenant satisfaction, it's 7%. I think considerably higher than buildings which are not sustainable or certified. Very important is that the probability for a lease renewal, of course, very important for your performance, and also the higher occupancy rates were up by 6%. And in that market, even the rents for these assets were higher. I have to say that that's not what I hear in my country. The rent will not be per se higher than with buildings which are not rated, but the performance is in general in my country is seen as more favorable because of the increased occupancy rates, the higher quality of the building, and the look at an efficient operation. So it really, I think, connects to what BRE is thinking about the benefits of sustainable assets. There are also now this line GRESB, the Global Real Estate Benchmark. I think it's very interesting for you to look at your to get some more information about this system, because it's a benchmark and system which looks at real estate portfolios, the way they are managed, the way they are performing from an asset level. And investors are looking at this benchmark to see how the asset manager is performing, and are using it as an engagement tool for the asset management to press them to be more to have a better sustainable performance. Everybody also wants to know, what are the additional costs for a sustainable building? The funny thing is that most of my clients are not so transparent in what the actual investment costs are. But what I hear is that for instance, for the edge, they said, well, The additional outstanding costs were 10% of the investment in the construction, which is, I think, considerable. But if you look at the excellent, which is 1 star below, it's only 2.5%, which means that if you go to the very good, which is still a very good building, you probably end up with within your budget. It's just about taking on the design in a different way. It should be integrated. So if you do the right things within the BREEAM scope, it's not necessarily a more expensive building, but it has a better revenue result. Genius, please not start the movie yet, but help me with my time, because with the PDF slides I don't see the. So, am I halfway now, or? Okay, I'll do it a little quicker now. Okay, another important thing, I guess, for a sustainable building is what it means for the user / tenant of the building. I think the biggest plus is the high quality working environment. A healthy workplace. There's now more, as a new development, the WELL certificates. There's a new focus on healthy workplaces, and it's all about adding productivity and health to your workforce. Healthy buildings reduce sick leave, boost productivity, and also a very interesting point that Deloitte, the tenant of the Edge, is making, is that there are actually people who are calling Deloitte and say, "I want to work at your company because you have such a great building." So Deloitte finds that the building helps them to attract good people from the market. They never thought of it, but it's just an effect. So they call it the war on talent. Those buildings help with that, and I think for a company which, for the type of company which have, of course, quite expensive people who work there, as you probably will know when you are a client of Deloitte and those kind of tenants, then you know they're probably having a point there. Also, the building helps them to achieve their corporate sustainability goals. All right, so it's always important when you talk to a tenant or to a prospective tenant that you think about or ask or do some research what sustainability means for that company. And it may very well be that renting your sustainable building will help them to achieve their sustainability goals, so they can report that to their corporate level, which is great, of course. Some pictures. One of the features of the building, which I will show you more in the short movie at the end, is that it has this atrium. And apart from the fact that the atrium is a great space to be, it also it's facing the north. It collects warmth, which is retrieved from the ventilation air. So it adds to the energy balance. Also, the south facade has windows which are not too big, so they're the optimum between daylight harvesting and trying to get the warmth radiation out of the light. So it's a mix of glass panels and closed panels, and the closed panels in the facade on the south orientation are PV panels. One of the features energy-wise is that we use heat-cold storage in aquifers. I'm not sure if it's a concept that is technically feasible in this part of Europe, but it basically, you can imagine that we have drilled wells under the building, which are about 100 meters deep, and the HVAC system, of course, takes warm energy in the summer from the building, but it stores it in these aquifers under the building, so it can be harvested when you need heating energy in the winter. So it's kind of storage of energy. In between the building and the wells are these heat pumps, like in your refrigerator, so they convert low density energy into high density energy that you can use in your building. So just a few figures for the people who like this. The energy stored for cooling is 18, 19 gigajoules. So we're talking about a huge amount of energy that can be stored in a sustainable way. So you don't have to buy that energy with your utility company. You just harvest it from the world and use it again and again. With this system, the CO2 emissions were reduced by 27%, which is, I think, a lot. Also, the energy that's used for the climate system is harvested from the roof, from the PV panels in the facade and on the roof. So when you combine the two, it's obvious that you don't use much energy from the grid. So that takes so that gives us well, it's not delivering energy, but it's getting close. The energy performance is 100% better than our building code standard, which is quite high in the Netherlands. We have innovative heat pumps, which are super efficient. They use this cooling liquid, which is not I would say it not aggressive to our environment. So it has an ODP of 0 and a GWP of less than 1, which is quite special for those kind of installations. The only on a large scale where you find these liquids are in your air conditioning in your cars. But we are, I think, one of the first to use it in on a real estate level. So it's a patented innovation. So here's some figures about CO2 emissions. We use active ceilings for great comfort. Another thing is that we are reusing rainwater for the toilets. Although rainwater we can harvest, we use. So that's 3,500 liters per day. So that's, I think that's quite a lot. We have a water bunker of 35,000 liters, which is harvesting the rainwater from the roof. So although water is very cheap, we thought it was the right thing to do because it's very silly to use drinking water to flush down the toilet, if you think about it. Another great feature, I think, of this building is that the lighting system, it's a LED lighting system. It's powered over Ethernet. So effectively, the light system is an outlet of a data system. The data system you need when you want to have a lighting system that is really manageable and it will can be addressed on a unique basis. So it's part of the Internet of Things. So with this development, you don't have you don't need another power net above your ceiling. All the power is coming from the light management system itself. I think it's about 70 volts or something. Doing that, we have only installed an amount of electricity demand of 4 watts per square meter, which is really low. I think when we use the default values, it should be closer to 8 or 9 watts. So it's a huge reduction on power when you install those kind of lighting systems. The great thing about it is also the quality of the light. In future, it can give you the possibility to set your light conditions accordingly to the day of time. So you can make when you take the blue color out of the light, which you would do at the end of the night, people will be more comfortable because it mimics the characteristics of the sunlight. We have a lot of energy submeters. We use FSC wood. We purchase materials from companies which were 14,001 certified. That means that those companies have their own environmental management systems in place. So of the bulk of materials, they were sustainably produced. The origins were known. And the producers of those building materials were taking care of their own environment. We installed 14 charging stations for electric vehicles, which is a big thing in our country, which is 10% of the parking spaces. This is quite a lot. I think BREEAM only requires 3%. But there are a lot of electric cars there, and they're always fully occupied. We implemented an ecological corridor for bats, bees, and birds to add to the biodiversity of the area, and of course the whole facility management is managed by the big data that comes from the sensors which are implemented in the light luminaires. For instance, temperature, CO2, light levels. People can, with the app they are connecting with the building when they come in, so the building knows how many people are inside, where they are. So the management of the climate system is mostly on basis of demand, right? So you don't spill any energy in climatizing the building. You only do that where the people are working at that moment. It even goes that direction that, for instance, for cleaning purposes of each space, it is known which space is occupied or has been occupied. So if a thing like a conference room is not used, the cleaner will not go there to clean it because it isn't used that day. So yeah, in the end, this big data should lead to a more efficient operation of the building. Well, you have some pictures here of the facade with the PV panels and also on the roof. Now the people are connecting with the smartphone with their working area, so they then can adjust the light level to their own standards and the temperature level by the radiation of the activated ceiling. I think, of course, the edge is, well, has been for us really a marking point, a milestone as far as sustainable buildings are concerned. But of course, there are new trends now, and I think Martin has already touched some. Of course, I think the Edge was one of the first smart buildings at that scale. That will be a development that will be more intensified in the future. My client for this building was the developer OVG, and they are now positioning themselves in a market not so much as a real estate company, but they are going to focus themselves as a technology company. So they're moving towards the Googles and the Apples of this world, but then on a real estate level. So that's, I think, a very interesting thing to see, marketing-wise. The big data will lead to improved energy management, to improve indoor quality, to improved uptimes of systems, because by monitoring the systems, you know when they need maintenance. They know that they are going broke before they are going broke, like Martin already said. So it's really a very lively building, a very proactive building management. Another big new trend is the healthy buildings. As Deloitte already saw that healthy buildings attract people. People are for those companies the most valuable assets, so they really have to take care and nourish them so they can perform the best they can for their company and have a very good environment as well. A good example is that the WIL certification is now being developed and rolled out in Europe from the US, and it's a certification which is, I think, 30% technical and 70% it's all about the organization of the tenant, how the way they go about with people, with health, with their. It even goes about having fitness, having the right healthy food in the restaurant, having art on the walls. It's very high level and very well developed, and I think it's a new focus in the real estate industry. But you have to bear in mind that it's really it's an organizational certification more than a technical one. So in your marketing and talking to your clients, you have to realize that. Circular economy, I think, is a big thing. And the leasing of elements is really fitting in that quite well. Investors still have a bit of cold feet because they don't know what they're owning anymore. When you invest in a building, but you are not owner of the lighting system because it's leased from Philips, I think it's something that we have to find a new. The value of the building will not be so much in the value of the bricks, but more in the value of cash flows or revenues or otherwise. Having said that, I think all those new focuses are really great and we have to develop, but we should not forget that we still have a climate issue to resolve, because if we do not resolve that, nothing else matters. Can you start the movie?
Welcome to The Edge. This is certifiably the greenest office building in the world. But that just might be the least interesting part about it, because The Edge in Amsterdam is also possibly the most connected office space in the world. Working at The Edge is insane. It all starts with a smartphone app developed by the building's main tenant, the consulting firm Deloitte. When you arrive at The Edge, a camera recognizes you by your license plate for automatic access. And because it's the Netherlands, there are chargers available for electric cars. Inside, things start to get interesting, because you don't have a desk. No one here does. Workspaces are assigned to you based on your schedule for the day. You have options: a work booth, a meeting room, what they call a concentration room, a sitting desk, a standing desk, a balcony desk. You can even just hang out in the sun-filled atrium all day. This concept is called hot desking, and it's what allows Deloitte to have 2,500 workers, but less than half as many desks at its Dutch headquarters. The app knows your preferences, and when you arrive at your workspace, the lights dim or brighten based on your stored settings. And any of the building's massive flat screens can be instantly paired with an iPhone or a laptop. So what makes all this possible? The LED light panels developed by Philips specifically for The Edge are actually powered by low-voltage Ethernet cables, which means every light in the building becomes its own internet-connected data hub with 28,000 sensors that makes the building and its users smarter.
The building becomes a very important part of who we are and what we want to be, and we actually seen in recruitment that more people are now spontaneously coming to Deloitte because they want to work in this building.
Oh yeah, and then there's these. The building has solar on the roof and on the south-facing wall, enough to power the building and all of the electric cars, computers, and smartphones used by its employees. And those employees are kept warm by two enormous boreholes tunneling more than 400 feet down beneath the building. During the summer, The Edge pumps warm water deep into the aquifer, where it sits, insulated, until it can be sucked back out in the winter to warm the building. Outside, there are beehive towers and bat homes to support the local pollinators. And even the rainwater is collected to flush the toilets and irrigate the gardens.
We are planning to build a lot more buildings like these, and the next one will be smarter, and the one after that will be smarter as well. And we won't stop until all cities in the world are filled with buildings that are intelligent and that are not using any energy anymore. In the end, we will actually need less buildings in the world, but the buildings that are there will be used in a better way, will be more efficient, and will be using a lot less energy than in the past.
Sometimes The Edge just feels like it's showing off, and some of the app functionality isn't quite ready for prime time yet. But most of the time, this is all running seamlessly in the background. It's maybe the most fully realized vision of the Internet of Things the world has ever seen.
It's a building that has sustainability as an important aspect of making a good place to work. In Dutch, there is even a word for this new kind of thinking about the workspace, that nieuwe werken. In a nutshell, it means that work workspace is more focused on the tasks that need to be done and the working community that it's part of.
Another day at the Edge comes to an end. A custom security robot that looks a bit like R2-D2 wakes up and begins its patrols. Now, if only the app could automatically come conjure up a nice dinner recipe, maybe provide all the fresh ingredients at the end of the day to get you cooking. No surprise, the Edge has that too. Bon appetit.
So I think this basically concludes my presentation. Well, a little bit back to the BREEAM score, which is just a result of what we have been doing there. And I always have to explain about the materials section, which is only 46%. And I think that's just where the market was at that time. And I think it's still very difficult to have this super sustainable materials really produced in a sustainable way with reused, recycled materials. So when it comes to energy and health, I think we're there. We're there in a way that we understand the process, we understand how we have to do it. But when it comes to materials, and I see that with most of the projects, that's the one area which is always lagging. So I hope that the industry will help us to get there. And I know that some concrete producers in the Netherlands we are working with are really making great steps to going to sustainable materials with less CO2. So I think we're getting there, but well, that's it. I hope you know a little more about the Edge, and it inspires you to develop your market. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounded a little bit, I caught myself that it's like a Tesla for office buildings, the Edge.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Good. We have some questions from the audience to you. Okay. There are actually multiple questions, but I will read two that rated highest.
Okay.
Okay. Not 98%, but 8 likes. Quote, yes, sustainability costs more, as you mentioned, 10% to 12.5%. But what about risks in non-sustainable assets? And they also have a price. Isn't it better to invest up front? So I guess that's related to, what happens if you don't invest that extra 10%, and what will happen with the building, in coming 10, 20 years?
When I talked to OVG about this, the developer of this building, they said, well, there's a lot of money now in the market. We have to sell this building. And if there's an investor who can choose on that location between two buildings, right? One building is not certified or not so sustainable, and the other one is, like the Edge. Which one will they choose? And that's a very, of course, when you have the money in your pocket and you have to spend it on the building, and you can make this choice, I think it's very obvious which one to choose. So that's one. So it will be more, I will say it. It will be more on top of market. And it also will present a lower risk in the future, because those buildings have proven to be have a higher occupancy, happier tenants. The building being as it is also gives you something to connect you with your tenant, because you can discuss the sustainability performance with your tenants. So it also gives you all the kind of tools to be in contact with your tenant and to follow the performance and to be honest about it. And that really helps in renewing lease agreements and to stay focused on the client.
So as you're saying, the competition between the potential buyers of the building, but I guess it's same applicable to the tenants when they are choosing. There's two buildings in the same street and one is better, the other one is worse. So I
think it depends on the tenant. When you look at the bigger tenant, the corporate tenants with with their sustainability goals and vision, they are the ones I think at this stage to go for when you're developing this kind of buildings. There are still a lot of tenants who don't care, who are really only about the lowest rent with the highest quality. But I think it's shifting now, and nobody can. A few years ago, companies could say, "Well, I don't care about sustainability." If you say that nowadays, I think you're out of business. So there's more pressure to do right and to behave sustainably. That also means that you are, you're renting sustainable buildings, for your people and for your investment.
So the risk of not going green or being sustainable is basically losing the competition in the future to come.
Yeah, and that's not only with real estate. As I always said, you see that with oil and gas shares. Shell has a lot. Shell Oil and Gas had some really bad press about their stocks, and now they're really into big programs to reinvest in sustainable energy sources, which they, I think, stopped investing in 6 or 7 years ago because they say, well, there's no future in that. We disinvest, but now they're just forced by the shareholders to go back. So I think it's a broad movement which forces you to push you in the way to spend your money in green investments, not only real estate but also other sectors. Yeah.
Okay, so property is just part of the movement, right?
Right.
Okay. One more question, maybe two more. What is your opinion about using multiple certification schemes in the building, like BREEAM and then WELL for the internal premises?
Yeah, I think that's I think it would be ideal for all when it should be one integrated system in which you can perhaps choose your focus, which is of course I think that would be a great thing, which is possible within BREEAM. You can choose. Well, you know, I'm going 100% for health and well-being. Perhaps that means that I can do a little less for the energy part, because comfort and energy efficiency, they're biting each other a little. So it would be good when the health part, which is, I think, is already greatly served in the BREEAM aspect. But I think it would be good when all those systems would be aligned, or but of course it's also the free market. So and that's also good, I think, because systems are competing, getting better, but they shouldn't be confusing for us and for you,
for the users,
which one to choose. Yeah.
Okay.
So it would be better when they would be one, but on the other hand, when there are multiple, there's more competition, and that drives them perhaps to a better quality level.
And perhaps they fulfill one each other at some point, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And well, the last question, I think I'm obliged to ask it. You said 10%. The Edge was more expensive.
Yeah.
Compared to standard. So, do you have a number? What's that 100%? What is the cost of building such
I'm
kind
not
of
allowed
building?
to disclose that.
You mentioned it,
no, but I think the percentages are more important because I think everybody can make it. It's 40,000 square meters, so I think every developer can do his maths on that. But it's 10%. Above the building that would only fulfill our building codes. So if you have low building codes, you're going to a very high level of the gap could be bigger. So it's all relative to our home market. Yeah, but I think there's a growing amount of investors that are, as you say, willing to pay up front. So they have perhaps a little lower yield, but with a lower risk. And that's, I think, a mechanism that works with investors. Yeah.
Okay. And perhaps more loyal tenants, as you say.
Which adds to the value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation.